this meeting of the Winnsboro Economic Development and Planning and Zoning Commission joint workshop to order at 5:31 p.m. Do we need to say anything else specific for the workshop? No?
No.
Okay. All right.
Do I need to say anything? Okay.
Wow, this is a quick workshop. Oh, you guys.
Okay,
get
so
it.
You can gather.
We said
I had actually asked Craig to talk to EDC and schedule a joint meeting because I thought it was important for the P&Z to know what EDC had up its sleeve in terms of projects that they had either on the horizon or in works now. Since at some point in time, after we get over our current project we're working on, supposed to start working on a master plan. So it'd be nice if we, kind of were on the same page as far as that goes. And if there's any questions or things that the EDC needs to know about the P&Z has in mind, now probably a good time to share that as well. Gosh, there was something else I was going to say, but I forgot what it was with all the excitement. It'll come to me. But I don't know if you want to give us a rundown on what kind of projects you have. I mean, specifically, or for example, the stuff going on with the old Lone Republic thing and what the plans are for that. Other things you have as far as on your master plan, as it were, for what you got going on.
I can probably on their behalf address what things are going on with the Market Street project. Where we are right now is that we're still in the design phase of that project. We've closed on the Market Street, on the Lone Republic buildings, and pretty much cleared them out. We've contracted with MHS Planning and Design out of Tyler to do some concept plans. They have met with a lot of the stakeholders that are there on Market Street, including the Arts Center and of course our then Parks or Farmers Market Manager group, now Parks and Recreation and Farmers Market Manager, and then a few other folks, and come up with some concepts. And the next step in this process is we're going to take those concepts back to the public probably right after the first of the year and have some public meetings on that to get some more input, make sure that the public understands that these are concepts and they're not the final design. So we anticipate shortly after the first of the year going ahead and holding some public meetings on that to get input from the public with regard to what they would like to see, and also help them to understand the purpose and the reason that we're doing this space. The other thing that's relevant to that is that on the financing end of it, we've had preliminary conversations with a financial management company, bond counsel, and we're in the process of actually moving to a new financial services company that specializes in small cities, and I think that will give us a lot better service than what we had been receiving prior to this time. We've had some preliminary meetings with them, explaining what we're wanting to do, explaining where we're wanting to go, and I just received their agreement today via email. We'll be looking at that, getting that through council in December and moving forward on that. Their recommendation on this is that initially we were thinking about having this all rolled into a bond package. But given the amount of it and the cost of actually doing an election and the way the Texas law is currently written, that if it fails a bond, you can't bring it back to the voters for another 3 years, and we don't want that. We feel like it's probably be better if we issue some other forms of debt. So the reason we've gone with this financial services company is to give us those options, whether it be certificate of obligations or the creation of a tax increment reinvestment zone in that area. Several different options, and as soon as we get them on board also in January, we'll be having them come out and speaking to EDC and probably have a joint meeting with you guys, EDC and council to look at financing options for this project. The other aspect of this project, there's actually three other aspects of this project. One of them is Prosperity Bank, which is in City Hall, that is under contract. Prosperity Bank, the city purchased that for $175,000 plus a tax abatement over 10 years, not to exceed $25,000. That is actually below market by about $50,000, a little over $50,000. We've got some preliminary cost figures that probably need to be readjusted now on what it will cost to get that restored as City Hall. Prosperity wants to keep it on their books until January. And so the actual closing isn't going to be until after the first of the year. I kind of anticipate it's going to be towards the end of January, at which time it will actually become city property. And we will be able to get in there and start doing things, and we will probably at that point in time move the Main Street office over there temporarily until we can get our financing worked out and our design worked out. Also move the EDC office back over there so that the building will be occupied. One of the other things that we're looking at is that if we move those offices, that'll free up more room in the depot to perhaps expand the museum within the depot. If y'all haven't been in the museum, it's filling up rather rapidly, and the volunteer museum board is doing a pretty good job. But I think that we're going to, at one point in time in the future, we're probably going to need some type of, I don't want to call it a curator, but we're going to need some type of either at least part-time staff member or something more than what we have as far as volunteers to be able to actually manage the museum and to operate the museum. The other thing that we're looking at, which just kind of came up over the last couple of weeks, is that our parks director came to me with an idea that we'd actually thought about, but we never thought of actually integrating it into this. But we know the parking area behind the depot that faces Carnegie Street is underutilized. It's city property. We own that entire block, and it's very much underutilized. It's utilized very heavily during the Art and Wine Festival. So we've given consideration in the past to doing a number of different things with that space to making it more attractive. But Stacy actually came with the idea of possibly, with the changes in Market Street, let's just go ahead and move the farmers market over there. So possibly building a covered pavilion over there for the farmers to have a permanent spot with market, provide a power and probably some water and sewer over there, and a covered area for them. But then she also came up with a great idea of, we need a food court. We need food truck court. And so we kicked around that idea when Cypress Creek Brewing came in over there, and we kicked around the idea and just thought, how could we make this work? Well, Stacy's idea really took it to a level that I had never even thought about. She thinks it'd be cool if we had railroad cars as the permanent food trucks, and that would be another attraction, another draw. Her husband Jake is he worked for Jackson Construction. He's got a strong construction management background. He's doing some preliminary cost estimates, and we think that we can probably do this relatively inexpensively, $250,000 or maybe less for that. And if we can find the cars and figure out how to get the cars there, that would be a really cool thing. But we would have to have bathrooms, some shade areas and things like that. But that would bring a whole nother dynamic to our downtown area, actually expand the footprint of our downtown area. And it's Stacy's mind, and I agree with this, it would provide another alternative to bring locals up closer to downtown and, to bridge that kind of cultural gap that seems to be divided there by the railroad tracks a little bit. But so that's another part of this package. So this whole idea of the destination of Winnsboro and this whole concept of how this could become continues to morph. So we're not ready to pull the trigger yet on just Market Street because I see this getting larger and larger and larger. With the advent of that, we're also looking at some properties downtown, which because we're going to need more parking. And so we're looking at some areas downtown that maybe the city can acquire or do a joint venture with a private developer acquiring some properties, and maybe the city put in parking as long as it's public parking, or the EDC helping the city put in the parking as long as it's public parking. And then maybe some type of strip area, strip center type of thing, or some other type of commercial venture at that location. Hey, David. So
I'm sorry.
that's another one of the things that we're doing. At the same time, I think y'all are aware that we received the sidewalk extension grant for Elm Street. It'll pick up at Franklin Street, go down to Walnut Street on the south side of Elm Street, and then head south on Walnut to Broadway Street. With that, that's going to take some of the front-end parking away from the barbershop there. It's also going to impact the parking on La Conchitas.
La Conchitas.
Okay, my favorite Mexican place. It's going to impact that parking there. So one of the things that we're considering doing is, in exchange for, it's our right of way, we can do that, but to make sure that we maintain good relationships with our businesses, one of the things that we thought about doing was going in and redoing the alley. And then, possibly after redoing the alley, going ahead and laying some blacktop up to where they could have some additional parking there. It would have to be public parking during non-business hours. So we're trying to create some win-wins here. So that's as far as those are the projects that we have right now in the downtown area that we're looking at. Can I talk some more? I haven't seen y'all in a long time.
Exactly.
Which alley? The alley by the Mexican food place that
Both.
goes from...
Yeah.
The east and west and north and south alley. The one that runs from Elm Street, or from Walnut, all the way over to Franklin, okay? And then the one that runs from Elm all the way down to Broadway. And some of the property that we're looking at acquiring is
So
that,
behind the old Lemon law office, doctor's office now.
Dr. Petty's office.
Dr. Petty's house.
Okay,
Yeah.
that.
And we're actually looking at that property there on the corner, if we could possibly acquire that, the skating property. So, we're looking. We've also looking at some possible projects on North Main, which I don't know if I don't feel comfortable enough to talk about yet, but it would impact where the old theater was and those buildings on that block. And we're trying to move up to where we take care of the building that's next to Chet's eventually too. Okay. So we've got some plans, preliminary plans coming down the pike that are kind of comprehensive that we'll be calling on y'all on, and we're working a lot with the P&Z on, because they're actually looking at the zoning ordinances and how this might impact them.
Are there grants available for any of these projects where the whole cost and burden doesn't fall on the taxpayers and city and?
On the infrastructure component of it, yes, okay. where we're running water and sewer, doing sidewalks and those types of improvements, and some other types of public improvements, yes. On some of the others, not so much. So that's why we're bringing in some finance management folks to come in and talk to us about how can we help pay this, you know, through the establishment of tax increment reinvestment zone, to where the incremental increase in the property values, that tax from that would go into a special fund to address public projects just in that area. So we're looking at that as an option. That wouldn't impact just the homeowners. It would just impact, the only increase, TERS or a TIF, you have your property tax. You set your valuation of your property tax when you create the TIF. As property values increase over time, the difference between the baseline property valuation and the increased valuation, as more investment comes into the area, that increase, the taxes generated on that increase, go into a separate fund, which is controlled by a TERS board of directors, and can only be used for public improvements. And the public improvements that they can be used for are everything from infrastructure to lighting to park benches to aesthetic things, or to the acquiring additional property. Now the trick here is identifying a geographic area that you believe that the valuation of the property will increase over time. Everybody follow what I'm saying? This is how we finance the cannery development in Lindale. So it didn't impact regular homeowners. You know, the only impact that it had is that as property values increased for the downtown area in this instance, those would also increase. So in addition to that, we're actively looking at property for a hotel, and actively looking for property for a police station. I've also had some preliminary conversations with Christus EMS regarding the possibility of them working with the Winnsboro Volunteer Fire Department. Perhaps if we could find a developer that would come in and build a fire department / EMS building, and then lease it back to the FD and to the EMS, that Christus might be willing to help us defer the cost of that rent, because they have done this in Lone Star and a few other cities where they have a presence. So we're looking at a number of different options. So I'm going to skip away from the downtown and talk to you about this is another one of the projects, about the 12-inch water main to the school. We've laid all the mains laid. The only thing that we have not been able to do yet is to connect it to the elevated tower. And the reason that we haven't been able to connect it to the elevated tower is because we're still waiting on a railroad permission to bore under the railroad to be able to do that. Once that's done, once that bore is complete, the water main will become active, and there'll be 12 inches of water flowing to the high school and that's Myrtle Street, immediately. Once that occurs, then I think that the P&Z and the EDC need to consider what they want as the city continues to grow in a westerly direction, because that will open up the back side of the Del Cruz property completely open for more residential development. And not only that, that water will also be able to carry it all the way out to be able to connect Myrtle Street to 852 out there. So that's maybe 10 years down the line, but that's something that y'all need to be thinking about as to what we want that to look like. And part of that's out of the city limits right now, but we probably need to start considering zoning what the zoning might be in that area. So those are the, what else have we been doing? We haven't been doing much.
No, I haven't done anything.
You think anything else?
We haven't been doing anything either.
We've got, I can tell you this, we have a business that's very interested in siting here that will bring at least 25 jobs here and take a building that's been on the market for a number of years, and where that is right now is that they're in negotiations with the owner of that building, and they're kind of, neither side's wanting to give.
No, that doesn't happen. That couldn't happen.
So, and this is a done deal. I mean, they will be here to talk to y'all, but we're also working with the East Texas Council of Governments on looking at some loans and grants, so that they might be able to bring to the table to close that deal. But this would be a win-win for the city. And it would be inside the city limits, which would help our tax base. Did I do what you wanted me to do, Mr. P&Z?
Yeah, that sounds good. I think it gives us a lot of insight as to what's going on.
Here I wasn't gonna talk.
Well,
Are there any, can I ask a question? I'm just gonna do it.
That's what's up.
Any, okay, any developments, housings, any housing
Any what?
developments on the horizon?
Housing.
Developments.
Oh, housing.
Housing
Thank you.
developments.
Well, it's funny you should say that. Yeah, there's been several. We've had more housing starts in Winnsboro in the last 24 months than they've had probably the 60 months prior to that combined. And I was at the title company this last week, closing on some property over by the park, and I spoke to, is it Sarah?
Sarah.
Sarah, and she told me, she said, Greg, she said that it was up until about a year and a half ago, they were moving a lot of property. It was all outside the city limits. She said now we're seeing property sell, greenfield space to build, as well as other properties moving in town. So there's more housing occurring, and we're starting to see the Dela Cruz areas. I think they have 4 houses under construction, or
Yes.
3 or 4 houses under construction right now.
That's good.
So that's going to get us to a point to where we as a city, as that continues to grow and develop out there, we're going to have to go back, and the council's going to have to, we're going to have to make some tough decisions with regard to redoing those roads out there, those streets, because they're horrid. They're cow paths. They were never built properly, and so that's going to require some reinvestment. They'll probably have to be completely dug up and redone. So, and you know, the reality is that we're growing. We're going to have to make some investments in infrastructure, and whether it be downtown or in a residential neighborhood.
Yes, you do.
How many houses could Dela Cruz hold? How many lots are there? Does anybody know?
I'm sorry?
How many lots
It's
at Dela
current,
Cruz?
I think they currently have somewhere around 250 lots that are platted in there currently.
Oh, over in the Dela Cruz area?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, ma'am.
That's a nice little house.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's other developments too that are there that have just sat for years, that some infrastructure has been done and they walked away. There's some more that are here in Winnsboro that are within the city that can hold anywhere from 20 to 30 more homes.
Good.
I know a couple of years ago when we had the Madison Oaks people in here, there seemed to be 2 or 3 other companies that had expressed interest in building multifamily things. Is there any more of that on the horizon that you know of?
Haven't heard of any more. We haven't had any interest in multifamily yet. If we, you know, I would recommend that that if we do get to see some more of that, that we probably try to target more market rate multifamily,
Right.
other than the low income housing tax credit like Masson Oaks.
Right, well, I know that was kind of what was driving that development, was that there was some kind of money or financing or something or other they were getting from another organization, okay.
Yeah,
And
it's federal money.
Yeah, and I've had some conversations, I had a conversation this last week with the Ford dealership, and they're still having interest in relocating on the other side of 515. So I don't know when that's gonna be. They said that they would probably come back to the EDC when that occurred. But he was talking like it's more like they're going to have to, you know, rather than staying where they are is not an option.
Sure, they've obviously outgrown that place.
Well, not only that, but it's in a bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of.
They do have that problem.
And their cars seem to float away.
Well, actually, they don't float that well, I heard.
Well, you
Issue for 'em.
mentioned the market rate on multifamily, but single family too is another thing that we've kind of prima facie discussed on a couple of occasions. And I know David and I talked privately about that on a few occasions since we're both in the building side of things. And that's some of the things that we need to address as we do look at some of these developments and possibly reassessing from planning and zoning some of the regulations on the Dela Cruz property. Because the biggest problem we've got right now is that we don't have the market for the larger houses out here. And so we need to kind of take a strong look at that from a policy perspective.
That's fair, right?
We are looking, my company's looking at a small tract in town that probably would yield about 8 homes, and working with the owner of that tract. And we're looking at a smaller home, but trying to keep it upscale on the exterior to do so. So that's all the negotiations right now.
The average cost of selling a home here is in the 135 to 140 category. I'd like to see that moved up, you know. But that, once again, takes a lot of, from your side, and their side, and our side, to make sure that that works. I do believe those people are coming here. They're just waiting to see what's going to happen. So many people that visited my properties and Gary's and those other builders here they're looking for that kind of a thing in this area. And we haven't been able to do that. You know, I mean, we can come into an area and we can tear down and we can build up, or we can flip it and do what we want, and we sure make the neighborhood look better, and everybody falls in line and takes care of their properties. But I believe from all the information I've gathered, and Gary and I have spoke at lengths over this, is that there are groups of people that really want to come here, that want to look at the $200,000 homes and up. We haven't built ourselves that yet.
We haven't.
We know what happened to Dela Cruz for 15 years, you know, and they slipped a couple $150,000 homes in there. I mean, we've got to do something to take a look at what we can do to uplift us being here and expanding the city. Everything you're saying is positive, but we've got to get the people here. We have to be active to get the people here. Everyone that comes here, David, we love this, we love the house, but you know what? 3 blocks away it's this, and 2 blocks away it's that.
It's you're right, David, it's a comprehensive strategy that involves what we're doing in the downtown area,
Yes.
what the school's doing. It involves our code enforcement, it involves a demolition of substandard properties, it involves the infrastructure improvements, our expenditures on streets and drainage. All those things have to be
Yes,
pulled.
they do.
It all has to come together if we anticipate people staying. It's one thing to attract them here to visit on the weekend. It's another thing to get them to actually invest here and open businesses and things like that.
I want them to stay, you know.
And that's another thing that we're looking at is how do there's 2 or 3 other components that we haven't talked about. One is the marketing then, and we're really working on the marketing. How do we market Winnsboro and market it on a larger scale, and Brenda's working on that heavily. I've charged Charles here with a 6-month project to figure out how to attract younger people, the millennials, and what's the generation after you?
Generation X.
Disease.
Just a
Or
moment.
Z.
Does that include people with gray hair?
Yes,
Oh.
you're a millennial.
Premature.
21st century.
Let's not vote that in, all right?
But how to attract,
Because I know where you live.
and not just attract, but how to attract and retain
Yes.
younger people to bring the entrepreneurs here.
If I may just share with you, the people that come and look at my house will say, gee, I hear about the new school. That's an attraction to bring people here. But are we set for that? I mean, yes, I mean, there's more properties to build. You know, we can build 4 or 5 a year if we really get to it. But they're excited, but yet there's a little standoffishness, I guess, if I can say that.
You guys have any questions?
I don't have any personally.
You guys didn't know you were that busy, did you?
No,
No, you've been busy.
no, very busy.
Craig, I just wanted to put a couple of bugs in EDC in your ear. And I know that we had talked about a while ago regarding vacant or empty downtown rental properties.
Yes.
And I was hoping somehow the EDC could play a part in working with, potential new business or expanding business entrepreneurs and kind of, being an intermediary between the property owners and these folks, and maybe finding a way to, do some EDC subsidies to get these people in there that could make some of these expensive rental properties a little more affordable, but then also use some influence with the property owners to kind of get them to, get off the dime on these things. So I think that we've got, several properties that have been empty for years that, represent some really nice kind of, potential restaurants and retail space that we've lost and haven't gotten back. So that's one thing. So like I say, put your thinking caps on kind of stuff and see what you can do with that.
Are you aware of our rent subsidy program that we provide to new businesses that are coming into the downtown area?
I have not, I haven't seen anything recent. Back in the day when I used to attend all the meetings, I remember something, but I'm sure it's been revised since then. But yeah, if you, is there a copy of that someplace online that you
I'll
can?
email it, or
Okay.
Charles can email
Well,
it.
the Main Street Board is also working with, I believe it's the Historical Commission. Cheryl is doing some marketing for the buildings that are currently vacant. They've got an online project that they're doing to bring attention to buildings that are vacant also through the Main Street program.
Okay.
And then, don't we have an ordinance about a monthly fee for?
We do, and it's never been enforced. And that's one of the things that I'm gonna bring back to y'all and bring back to council to see if we need to do this, because there's an upside to this and there's a downside to it.
Yeah.
And the way that the ordinance was written, all you need to do to avoid having to pay the fee is stick a for rent sign in the window right now. And that's, so there's no enforcement clause in it that has any teeth. So anybody can stick a sign in the window and put their phone number and then not rent the place for generations.
5 years, yeah.
Yeah, and you've complied with the ordinance. So it really is, it's a worthless ordinance
Well,
at this point.
My thoughts are more of a, take the carrot rather than the stick approach, and see if we can find a way to, make it more attractive to the property owners to get that place occupied and make it more affordable for the potential business.
You need to look at that, they have some fabulous, really, retail incentives, rental assistance, as well as
Okay.
more
Well, I'll look at
rental
the plan that
and
you
it'd be
can-
really good, Val.
Really?
My concern was
Don't mention-
rental prices are, on some places, Winnsboro won't support that rental price. And
Even with the subsidies we offer, those prices are still way too high for most people that are starting a business. And
Sure.
And to me, the subsidy almost encourages a building owner to have higher prices. Is that a fair?
Well, I think that's what we've seen a little bit. I think the prices were actually elevated when we started offering the subsidies.
Well,
I think honorable people don't do that, and we've always had honorable people until lately, and so we can't assume that the people purchasing these buildings are gonna be honorable anymore. That's why we have to have ordinances with CT.
Yes.
Well, Brad, I guess what I was thinking more in terms of, what the EDC could do in terms of qualifying who's eligible for ordinances, that, there is some kind of, current, market price per square foot for a certain kind of property in Winnsboro. And the thing is, if something is priced at a rental price like that, then it may be eligible for a subsidy. If it's priced more than a certain amount above that, then it wouldn't be eligible. So hopefully that would get the property owners to realize that, yeah, if they find somebody well-heeled with money to throw around, good, great, but, you're not gonna find that, and maybe we just drive the point home that, here's what stuff goes for.
And I think that we can add that to our ordinance, and I think that'll work well, again, with reputable building owners, but I think that occasionally you'll have someone that, for whatever reasons, tax breaks or whatever, doesn't care, and will comply. And in that instance, then you have to have some other type of stick or, strategy to deal with that, to incentives.
That's an exact area we were looking at the Main Street Board as well, from that perspective, in compliance with part of the Main Street program. We were going back, taking a look at a few of the other cities to see what they had done with their downtown historical districts. Which means we would have to put ordinances on those districts.
Yes.
To help enforce that.
Yeah, we would have
So
to.
it's not left open, but that is something that's been a discussion, and we're supposed to be getting some information from some of the other cities to see how they had handled some of that from a empty building standpoint, because there's some things out there that can be done. I was involved years ago in a project in Summit County, Colorado, Breckenridge, Frisco, and Dillon, where different type of product, but it legally can be done, where they were renting anything for high prices for ski season, just for the purpose of bringing in money, and they actually invoked an ordinance that required a twice-a-year inspection of rental properties that had to come up to a certain score, or they were completely removed off the market in their cases, or fined in some cases as well. So there's a lot of things that can be done within that arena to help support what you're talking about, Jim.
Okay.
Charles gets that too.
All right, the other thing was, Congressman Joe Morris was at our previous P&Z meeting regarding the billboards, and her point was about the out-of-town advertisers, and I said, I don't think there's anything we can do about that or should do about that as far as restricting who can and can't rent a billboard. It wouldn't really be our place. However, it might be something EDC could do something with in terms of helping local business owners rent those billboards. If they're gonna be there and they're there, we might as well have our businesses advertising on them, as opposed to, Sulphur Springs this or Mount Pleasant that. But, like I said, I don't know what can be done, but possibly, somebody will come up with some kind of great idea.
We can look and see how to subsidize advertising.
Of course, the danger there is that, somebody will see a cash cow and jack the prices up just because they don't come, so. I said, what we can do, legally and ethically, we have to figure out how we can fit that into the plan. That's, I think, all I had. I think that, like I said, it was mainly to get a feel for what EDC was up to, and if any questions for P&Z or requests, we'd certainly love to look at them as soon as we come to the billboard thing.
We got an active group over here.
That's right. Making moves.
Well, we're trying.
Thank you.
Anything else from you guys? P&Z is nothing else. Yes, they did.
I missed that.
We'll fill
You
you
were
in.
right.
I was in a car trying to could you string it to my car now, these meetings?
I'll get that done.
I knew that.
I'll get that.
I was in Dallas and got Gary and I said, I'm coming here. It's a little tough coming out of Dallas with this particular comment.
I can imagine. Okay, Mr. Chair.
All right, that's it. Okay. With that being it, appreciate y'all coming today.
Thank you.
And we will adjourn this meeting, workshop at 6:10 p.m.